Recognizing the member for Chilliwack, Kent.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker, and I am thrilled to rise in support, and I want to thank the Minister of State as well as the ministers who came before and who are there now for all the work here. I became a mom in 2005, and what I didn't know when I became a mom is that I'd have to make a very hard decision a couple of years later. I became a mom at a time where this government was not in power. And the decisions that I had to make in order to make sure my children were taken care of were substantial. My husband and I'm very lucky to have a very supportive partner. We are a two-income family, and we have had to be since the children came. So the choice that we made is we looked around at the spots, we looked around at what was available, we looked around at how would we know the quality of the care providers available to us. And there are so many quality care providers available in Chilliwack and Chilliwack, Kent, and across the province. Ultimately, we couldn't afford it, so we made the choice that I would work nights and weekends, and my partner would work Monday to Friday. He would build his career. Now, this is a choice that women need to make, that families need to make together, about whose career can go forward. And this is a childcare issue. Childcare is an equity issue, and it doesn't only impact women. But I do need to talk about the impact it had here. I was an educated, independent, career-oriented woman, and I made the choice to work evenings and weekends because somebody needed to care for our children. That was the environment that was present. Now, I do know that members opposite have mentioned that if I had have been single, I would have had more options. Had I chose to leave my husband, there would have been, under the previous government's plan, options for me. I would have been able to work during the day. I would have been able to pursue the field that I was educated in. And at the end of the day, I have no complaints because I stand in this house and I'm very privileged to do so, and it was my path that led me here. But this was part of my path, Honourable Speaker. The path where I had to choose how we were going to move forward as a family. And the irony, because we chose to move forward as a family, it almost cost me my marriage. It almost cost my children their family and that unit, because I didn't see my husband, essentially, for 4 years. While we worked that schedule. Because the childcare spaces, they weren't available, and the ones that weren't affordable because I didn't qualify, we didn't qualify for any supports, and it wasn't affordable because we were both starting our careers. Another thing that I saw were my friends who were entering their careers as early childhood educators. And the uncertainty about what that job looked like, where they would work, who their colleagues were to be when they got there, what credentials were needed. All ECE spots at that time were not created equal. The training was not created equal. As a parent, it was difficult, but for my friends who were entering the field, it was difficult. Again, a field that is hugely made up of women. So the decision to professionalize early childhood education, to recognize a profession as a profession, even though it's only women. And I say only, not out of any sense of contempt myself, but because traditionally we do not see women's professions recognized. We have our nurses, and so grateful for them, and their field is professionalized, but how many others can we think of? I worked as a community support worker, residential support worker, mental health support worker. It wasn't professionalized, again, predominantly women. Now, when I was working in these roles, my wage, I could not afford childcare. And as I just mentioned in the previous reality, I didn't qualify for the programs because I was still part of a marriage. So what I want to say is thank you. Thank you for adding this professionalization. Thank you for adding the standards so that people know what to count on. I am so excited because I know in my world I have a Miss Lana, and I'm just gonna leave it at that, no last name. She's an ECE worker, and she's amazing, and my kids loved her. And I had a Miss Knelson, Mrs. Knelson, and both of my children benefited from her. And it's only because I had these women in our lives that I was able to take steps and pursue my career, pursue my education, and continue on my path. Now, this might not, it seems far away. When we're far away from the hard times, they feel far away, which is good, and it's a blessing, and I'm grateful for it. But I remember how close we came. Just because there wasn't opportunity, just because the programs weren't available, just because the policies and the decisions being made were not supportive of my family. And I remember I come from a place where the idea is that 24-hour universal childcare is available because every child is born with two parents, Honorable Speaker, and one really could stay home, couldn't they? That's a hard lesson to try to internalize. And, though that message, Honorable Speaker, that came from a member of this House. That as a mother, I should be making a better decision for my children. Now, the work I get to do here, the work that my friends get to do here on both sides of the House, whether they're women or men, whether they have children or not, is a privilege, and it is one that for many of us, we can only do because of ECE workers, because of childcare. Our position here comes with a paycheck, and so maybe we can afford different, but the path to get here, it didn't start here. So I am happy that in this House now we are no longer saying, and we are no longer accepting the idea that I am my child's universal 24-hour childcare, and that there ought not to be any government program that would cost the taxpayer money. I am proud to be part of a team that recognizes that the value that we have by creating equality, by creating access, and by allowing full participation, whether you have a 2-year-old or you have a 32-year-old, that there's something to be gained there. I am proud that I am part of a family that recognizes that female-driven professions deserve professionalization, and they deserve the respect and the notoriety, maybe notoriety is not the right word, the recognition, the achievement that comes with being part of a profession that is recognized as its own thing, with its own regulations, that training is identified as what is and isn't part of that profession. Now, I've heard some suggest that this means we'll lose that more holistic approach. I don't understand that argument. The people who are coming into this field, and more people who can come into this field now because they'll be able to earn a living wage, because they know for sure what training they need to enter. These people bring this range of experience and life experiences and knowledge and come from different kinds of communities, different kinds of families, different cultures. So that holistic nature is still very much a part of it. Nobody's saying that we have a minimum standard now and that's all that should be done. And do you know what, Honorable Speaker? I have yet to meet an early childhood educator who would ever accept the minimum anyway. The early childhood educators I know have hugged my children and wiped their tears, and they've taught them how to be autonomous human beings in the world. They've given them things that I can't because, Honorable Speaker, I have 2 teenagers now, and I'm telling you right now that the advice I give is never going to be as well received as that of an expert. And so let's recognize that they're experts. I feel like the idea that there's more red tape when what we're actually calling for is that there's recognition, and the idea that there are barriers when what we're actually saying is here's a definition, here's an identity. Public policy and being part of this team, The public policy produced here with regard to ECE and childcare, this movement of this social program that will make it so that my daughter hopefully does not have to leave her career, her profession, or her husband in order to get childcare. All of these things, these are identity statements, Honorable Speaker. This is who we are, this is who British Columbians are, and we recognize, and we're taking the action to make sure that families can stay together and that that doesn't come at the cost of women having to take a step back and sit down. I loved the time I got with my babies. I loved the time I got to take care of them. And now that they're teenagers, I remember it fondly because they slept a lot. And despite the crying, there was more silence in my house. And I love that I have my teenagers now. And most of all, I know that my friends and my family who are making decisions to start families right now are not doing so at the peril that was in place under the government when I was making my little humans. So the proposed ECE Act will help strengthen and support quality as well. So this will rise or be able to lift everybody. The training and identifying what training is necessary, what training is helpful, what training is inclusive, will go a long way into a second part that's been very important to me, especially with regard to these bills, this bill specifically, but also the one discussed yesterday. Inclusive childcare is critical. Childcare that doesn't leave anyone out. Childcare where we know that the training provided and the training available and the standards, that they will create environments that can include all of our children. Now, we are more than ever recognizing the diverse abilities of our children and adults, of ourselves, of our colleagues, and the diverse ability isn't going to fit into that cookie-cutter model. Focusing on inclusivity, focusing on this being for all children, focusing on what can be gained by raising up all of our ECE workers, which raises up all of our children, which opens up options in our economy, which opens up options for families, which opens up options for entire communities. This is not only about recognizing a profession that it is long overdue that we recognize. This is not only about standards and regulations, this is not only about definitions, and it's not only about babies and women. This is a way we can raise up our entire communities and we can move forward together. This is a way we can protect our families. This is a way we can protect our health, our mental health. We can have safeguards in place for our children. I can't think of enough things that are good to say about this. I know in my community, Chilliwack, Kent and Chilliwack, because they're very intertwined, Honorable Speaker, this government's invested over $31 million in childcare. And that's already saved $17 million for parents. Now, that doesn't speak to how many families that saved. That doesn't speak to how many people have better mental health because they're able to have that resource, because they're not having to make those difficult, life-changing choices. And it doesn't speak to how many kids have that extra set of eyes on them, Honorable Speaker, or have access to those different ways of seeing the world, and those people who will hug them and who will wipe their tears away. It doesn't say how much has been gained from any of that. So, Honorable Speaker, I think that in 2006, when I was trying to put my first child into daycare so I could continue my career, 2006 was a long time ago. But I know I've heard from constituents who are making that choice now. And it is a choice. It ought to be a choice. It wasn't a choice for me in 2006. Now, I know I also heard comments around that same time, that it was harmful for kids anyway, for me to put them in childcare. That they should really be with their parent, their mother. That maybe I should make a better choice. Which, I mean, ultimately, the result was the same, but I would like to clarify that there wasn't a choice. So, Honorable Speaker, anything that raises ECEs, that supports them in their training, that provides standards, that allows parents to understand who they're hiring, who they're leaving their children with, who's watching and nurturing and teaching their babies, anything that does that, I'm a fan of. Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker.